She's going to talk to us about a very topical issue. How many people here know what it is? Do you know ChatGPT? That answers my question. ChatGPT, is it familiar? Right? So for some people, how many people can define artificial intelligence? Okay. Who would like to hazard a guess as to how much of the internet has African content? Content created from the 1.4 billion people who live on this continent. Anybody would like to hazard a guess? In percentage, how much of the internet? Sorry? Less than 5, correct. Yes? 2. Very, very close. It's about 3%. 4 billion of us, we are being erased as we speak here. We're being erased as we sit here. Who has ever been on a Zoom call and their head just disappears with those background blurs? We are being erased because we're not generating enough content for artificial intelligence to understand us, to see us, to know us. And therefore, in the future, we will not exist because we do not exist online. So people, please, this is the session you want to be in, and Miss Liz is going to light us up.
Thank you, everybody. You know what? I need everyone to stand. Okay? I know, you got to keep up with me. Okay? Stretch. I'd have you touch hands, but I'm not to you. Okay? I stretched before I came here myself. All right. So, they give me 15, I've come all the way from the US to deliver this 15-minute presentation for you. So I'm going to make it worth your while. You can sit now. Oh my God, you're so good. Okay, so thank you for responding to my Slido presentation or the question, because I really want to get a sense for where you all are with respect to artificial intelligence. And I'm sure you've seen all of the articles, all the content out there about the doom and gloom about artificial intelligence, right? And it's going to take your job. It's scary. But the thing is, it's here and it's not going away, so you might as well embrace it. And that's the reason why I came here, is because I really believe that we need to really, really embrace it in order for us to be effective in our jobs, so that we are able to keep our jobs, but also for us to be able to deliver on our services more effectively. So, in case you don't know, we're here at my lightning talk, which is integration of AI into storytelling and fundraising for nonprofits. Now, everything I'm covering, you can apply to anywhere in the sector. We just happen to use the title of nonprofits. I'm going to give you a quick story before I get into the presentation. 12 years ago, I was invited to South Africa by the Southern Africa Institute of Fundraising, and they said to me, listen, I teach fundraising at New York University. I teach digital fundraising. And they called me and they said, we have all of these organizations that were just defunded by the European Union because of the economic downturn, and they don't know how to brand themselves, they don't know how to acquire new donors and the like. Can you come and create some sessions around how they can use technology to do so? So I went there and I ran a bunch of different sessions around how to leverage email. Social media was very new at the time, because what I understood is if they wanted to reach a global audience, they needed to have a footprint of some kind online. And fast forward to today, done a lot of different talks around that, but I'm really excited about artificial intelligence, because while email and websites and even philanthropic platforms were game-changing back then, this is like 100 times more powerful than that was. And the reality is, the narrative is such that we're not represented, we're not there, but we need to be. And so I'm going to show you very accessible way to understand artificial intelligence and a specific emphasis on what's called generative AI. Are you with me? Sounds good? All right. And by the end of today, I want you all to promise me you're going to go ahead and sign up for ChatGPT. I don't make money off of it, so it's not about that. But I'm trying to make it so accessible for you that you start using it, and I'm telling you, it's going to change your life. Okay? All right, so let me tell you a little bit about what I do. I run the International Social Impact Institute. We're based in New York, but it's a global company, and we look to inspire global change through AI-driven narratives. And basically what we do is we work with diverse kinds of organizations, individuals worldwide, helping them to create positive change. We work with social impact organizations and institutions like academic institutions. We work with companies that are committed to the triple bottom line. And of course, social impact leaders like yourselves. And I'm going to slow it down. I'm trying to keep into the 15 minutes. So what we do is we help them amplify their impact, creating compelling narratives, so storytelling, I'm a storyteller, effective stakeholder engagement, so fundraising and the like, and also other sort of strategic approaches. What's important is that why I was able to have our team fully embrace AI so quickly is because I actually launched my company in 2020 after being in the sector for a very long time on LinkedIn Live and Facebook Live, because I knew it would get a global audience because it was during COVID. And that's how we're able to scale up very quickly. So now tapping into AI, it's really kind of given us a whole new level that we can deliver. So we do training, consulting services, events and partnership building, as well as generative AI as of 2023, in terms of how we run our company, because we're all geographically dispersed, as well as our clients, and being able to integrate it into our training and content. We have a great group of organizations and companies that we work with. Some of them are clients, some of them are just collaborators, but that's who we work with. But let's jump right into why you're here. Good news is you're going to be able to get my presentation, so don't worry that you're like, oh my God, I can't see her slides. So people like acronyms. So I came up with the acronym CARE. And you know who helped me come up with that acronym? ChatGPT, okay? Because I knew what I wanted to say, but I wanted to say it in a way that would be catchy for everybody. So the 4 things we're going to cover today, right? So this is AI for nonprofits, and it's the CARE approach for amplified impact. First, we're going to talk about the challenges limiting access for African nonprofits, because I promise you, I'm not talking about technology for technology's sake. I'm trying to show you how you can apply the technology to solve the problems your organizations deal with. Make sense? The next thing we're going to go into is AI, generally AI, and then generative AI. I'll give you some definitions that you can actually understand, not like the computer science PhD level definitions. And then I'm going to show you the different ways that AI in general democratizes access for organizations on the continent, as well as generative AI. Then I'm going to show you realize the value of generative AI. I'll give you a demo of a personalized donor communication that I recorded it for you because I wasn't sure about the internet here. But I'm going to show you how easy it is for you to use this tool to help you communicate better. And then finally, to empower your impact, we provided a curated list of resources to help amplify your efforts. All right, so let's go into 3 kind of key challenges, right, that the sector is facing. First is the enabling environment. I happen to live in a country, in the US, where we have policies and frameworks, all kinds of different things that support philanthropic giving, right? So there are incentives. That's not necessarily the case everywhere in the world, and certainly not in a lot of African countries. So even just being able to get to facilitate the giving is kind of difficult here, right? And even the transparency issues and the like. Another challenge is organizational capacity. I had a conversation with my colleagues last night about the fact that what we're teaching kids in school and what we need in the sector aren't necessarily aligned. And so we need to figure out how we can scale people's skills up very quickly, effectively, and cost effectively. The third challenge is money, right? Financial sustainability. How many of us are in feast or famine all the time? Feast or famine. You want to be able to make things a lot more, regular so that you can sustain the efforts of what you're doing. So let's talk about what AI is. So AI, quite simply, is computer systems that are capable of performing human-like tasks, such as analyzing data, making decisions, and automating processes. Does that sound accessible? You get that, right? It's that simple. Like I've seen lots of definitions that make it complicated. Then what I'm going to talk about, generative AI, is just a subset of that, and that is basically AI that generates new and creative content using machine learning, producing outputs like images, text, music, even code. Actually, ChatGPT can generate code for you if you want to program something. and videos and the like. So it generates content for you. And when we talk about democratizing access, AI in general can do so in the following ways. First, it can help with capacity building and governance, right? So you can do AI-driven training that can actually be specifically tailored to the learning of the specific individual you're trying to teach. So we have some educators in the room who can attest to that. And also providing, it's for skills development, and then also transparent financial transactions, and then some program outcomes. It also helps with data analytics and decision making. So AI-powered tools can help with data-driven decision making. So let me give you an example. Last week we did a webinar, and we obtained the chat from the Zoom chat, and then we also had a post-event survey. And we were able to put it in ChatGPT and get like sentiment analysis, get all kinds of different kind of information very quickly. And we said, what are the likely topics this group will want moving forward? And literally within half an hour we had generated all that. In the past, it would have taken hours to go through all that. So that's what it does. It really makes you a lot more efficient, but also helps you to make better decisions based on data. And then in terms of fundraising and donor engagement, there are AI-driven platforms that can optimize your fundraising strategies and personalize your donor engagement. And that's really, really important because you want to be able to connect with your donor. And even, I'd say for those of you who are on the foundation side of things, some of you have donors, and then others of you are just engaging with different stakeholders. And so being able to personalize that communication is important. When we talk about generative AI, the subset, we've got the ability to improve our visual storytelling. So you can create, Gen AI can create images for you, it can create video, it can create infographics. In fact, where's Rose? Rose, there you are. So Rose is going to be tomorrow launching the African CSO platform. I wrote an article for them, and we generated the cover image through using an AI platform. So you'll be able to see what that looks like when they launch it tomorrow. So you'll be able to create really great visuals. Also, persuasive messaging. How many of you struggle with social media content or creating content for your website and this stuff? Anybody? Yeah? Well, this can help you to really optimize it and make sure that you can actually even have it represent a specific tone, can add emojis and all kinds of different cool things. So for whatever content you're trying to generate for your digital engagement. And then for automated reporting and analysis, it helps you to create great data insights. And then, of course, personalizing your donor engagement. So you can tailor your donor interactions. Now, I said to you, I recorded myself doing ChatGPT because I figured there's so many people here that the Wi-Fi wouldn't work. But in order for you to see it, I'm going to actually have to go onto YouTube. So just give me 1 second to go to YouTube. And these things can be a little bit trying to create. And so I want to show you how easy it is to use ChatGPT to do that. So basically, I just typed out, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to help me write an update letter for our donor. I'm providing you with the donor's email inquiry and content for you to integrate into a response for her. So I'm going to paste in here. The donor's message is this. So it says, hi, I recently made a donation of $1,000 to Helping Hand Children Learn org, which is the org, I guess, the fictional org. Can you provide me with an update on how my contribution is making a difference? Thank you from that. What we're going to use is, like, for instance, you get a letter from a donor who wants an update on their donation, right? And these things can be a little bit trying to create. And so I want to show you how easy it is to use ChatGPT to do that. So basically, I just typed out, hey, ChatGPT, I want you to help me write an update letter for our donor. I'm providing you with the donor's email inquiry and content for you to integrate into a response for her. So I'm going to paste in here. The donor's message is this. So it says, hi, I recently made a donation of $1,000 to Helping Hand Children Learn org, which is the org, I guess, the fictional org. Can you provide me with an update on how my contribution is making a difference? Thank you from that person, right? So then I would also write in here, the response is kind of, this is what I want to include in the response that I want ChatGPT to write for me. Thank you so much for your generous contribution. Your support means a lot to us. Let me provide you with an update on the impact of your donation is making. We purchased 1 year school supplies for 100 children in Kibera. So it goes ahead and generates when I hit
when I click. And it gives you at least a starting point. Like, you can always customize further as you need to, but it really gives you a very comprehensive story to be able to share with them. Starts off with, you know, thank you. So basically, I gave it maybe 2 sentences. I said, I want you to generate a letter. Now, any newsheads who ever write a letter knows it takes a while to not only write it, but copy it.
With this, you're able to go ahead and get at least a starting point. So it wrote, "Dear Ms. Generous Supporter, thank you for your recent contribution of $1,000 to Helping Children Learn org. Your generosity is deeply appreciated, and we're grateful for your support in our mission to empower underprivileged children through education. I'm pleased to provide you with an update on how your donation is making a difference." You can always customize this, but at least it gives you something to start with. This is, "Thanks to your generous contribution, we were able to purchase 1 year's worth of school supplies for 100 children in Kibera. These supplies include essential items such as textbooks, blah, 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 blah. By providing these resources, we aim to remove barriers to education and create an environment that fosters learning and growth." So you're now talking about a large, it's not just like, typically we stop at 100 children were served, but what the donor is really excited about is what it means, right? What's the impact of that donation, as we all know. And so this is helping you to be able to flesh that out a little bit more. So let me talk about how we connect that support to the mission of the organization. Then we talk about, you know, as a result of that contribution, we're able to purchase supplies for 100 kids, which included X, Y, Z. And then, you know, we talk about the impact, right? By providing these resources, we aim to remove barriers to education and create an environment that fosters learning and growth, right? So you're creating a little bit of an impact piece there. We go further and says the impact of your donation. I'll read it because we're on a small screen. So it says the impact of your donation goes beyond the tangible items provided. Through your support, you have helped to inspire hope and motivation in the hearts of these children. Your kindness has shown them that there are individuals like yourself who believe in their potential and are committed to ensuring they receive a quality education. If you received a letter like that, how'd you feel? How would you feel? Right? Because usually it says, "Thank you for your donation. We're grateful for it," and that's kind of like where we stop. But this is how you inspire folks to connect with you. And even if it's institutional, you're dealing with people at the end of the day. And so that's, you're going to get this video, so don't worry about it. It keeps going, but it's that simple. Now, do you think you could do that? Do you know how to just simply communicate? And it's like just saying to someone, "Do this thing for me, please." And I say please. I always say please, and I say thank you, by the way. You know, and ChatGPT says you're welcome, which is really kind of funny. But the point is, you know, all of us are saying, "Oh, this is going to replace us." It's not going to replace us. It actually can make us better at what we do. And for those of you who might be looking for jobs or to get promoted, this is a good skill to have that you can bring to an organization that's a game changer. Because in the past, we've had to have copy editors. We had to have so many different people who could work on stuff, and we moved those people to work to do other things. In some instances, we didn't have them anymore. But we're able to be much more effective and efficient in delivering what we need to. So as an organization, imagine being able to write these kinds of letters, and then you can customize as you need. And by the way, the more you do this, you put it in threads, the more you do this, the better it learns. At some point, it actually starts writing like you, because it knows how you write. It knows how, because you score everything to let it know. So this is ChatGPT. It's easy, it's simple, it's something I want you to start playing with, and I promise you it's going to change your life. I'm going to tell you how crazy it is. One day, I was so excited by what it was able to do for us, and I just said, "I love you, ChatGPT. I'm so excited." Seriously, meaning, and I know it sounds crazy, but that's how life-changing it is in terms of being able to more effectively communicate. And here's the thing. If you've got data, those of you who deal in data, and I know data will be covered later, it can do significant analysis for you. I mean, it's really, really a terrific tool. So how many of you are going to go ahead and open up a ChatGPT account? Come on, more. Okay, so let me get out of this. Good, I'm glad. Let me get out of this and go ahead and share with you. All right. The resources. We have another QR code, I'm sorry. But we also have, so what you're going to do is in order to access this presentation, you can scan this QR code. Not only we get the presentation, but you're going to get resources. I'm going to tell you the resources that we curated for you. So next week, who's going to be in Nairobi next Wednesday? So I've been invited by the Kenya Association of Fundraising Professionals to deliver the actual workshop of this presentation. So for 2 hours, where you actually work on creating the stuff for your organization. So if you do sign up, then you'll be able to come with something that you want help with, and you're going to work on that for you. I also have courses that I offer that are online, and we have other things that you can also tap into, as well as for those of you who are bravely going to be using generative AI in your work. I've just joined the committee of the Global Generative AI Awards, and so we're looking for submissions in September, so if you can apply for that as well. And then we've curated a list of 5 very easy tools for you to be able to generate text, images, video, and audio. Okay, so that's what you're going to get when you go ahead and click on this. So I know I need to, my time's running out. Now I'm going to.
Thank you so much, Liz. I'm going to ask the AV team to come and remove the screen for us while we transition to the next session. So, using ChatGPT and making sure that your work gets easier, because that's really what it's all about. How many people here have seen a fax machine or used a fax machine? A handful, a facsimile machine. A handful of people. Everybody else in the room is like, huh, what's that? It's what you use on email. That's what we used to have to go put things in our machine to send them to other people in other countries. We now do that on email. That's how fast the world of tech is taking us. As much as some of these things might seem distant and not maybe pertaining to me, imagine they do pertain to you, because the world is moving forward, right? And we don't want to be left behind. For those of you who are struggling with, your letters, well and good, how many of you have donors who are in a different language from your primary language? And you need somebody to work in French or in Arabic to translate your letters. You don't need to hire anybody anymore. ChatGPT will do it for you, right? I, for one, am somewhat sad because my day job is that I'm a writer. Aww. So all the annual reports we get to do, all the documentation, there's something coming round the way that's going to overtake us. But the good thing is that much as AI is here and it's going to make things different, it's here to support us. So when I look at AI, I think of AI as my new intern that I don't need to pay and can do all the work that I need done, right, at the touch of a button. So please, make AI your intern as well. I'd like to invite John Wamwere. He's the Executive Director at the Family Group Foundation, which is the social investment of Family Bank Limited in Kenya. He started life as a communication specialist, but life happened and he became, interested in this world of social progress and social change, and he's worked in the development sector for many years. He's going to steer our next plenary session, which is on revitalizing systems and solidarity in philanthropy. So just as Liz challenged us in thinking about how can we get better at building connections, building systems that help us, we have a number of people who will be taking us in detail, and John will be able to steward them around that issue. Karibu, John.
So thank you very much, Wehaki, and congratulations on the work you're doing out there, Liz. I am privileged and honored to invite a very distinguished panel of Lalita Sachdeva, welcome on board, as well as Dr. Shelina Karibu. There was John Bosco, okay. And John Bosco Karibu. I'll just give a quick, and I think I can be allowed to sit so that oftentimes the mic doesn't insist that you stand. So, Liz has introduced herself. I mean, and what she's doing in the US and her institution. But I think I'll take a little time just to introduce Lalita. Lalita works with UNICEF as a private sector partnership expert, has done a lot of work in the continent of Africa, as well as in the Asian continent, particularly on private-public sector engagement for youth. So this is also an opportunity just to hear her. We also have on my extreme right, Dr. Shelina Wali. Dr. Shelina Wali is the CEO of Aga Khan Education Service in Tanzania, an accomplished educationist whose last major work was on integration of health and education. So karibu sana. And finally, John Bosco Kalisa of East Africa Business Council, where he works as the executive director. So this is our distinguished panelist that will be looking at this very interesting conversation that we've had since morning. That we are talking about very complex issues, very large scale, abject poverty. We're talking about economic inequalities. We were talking about racial injustice, as well as climate change issues. And we are saying that no one can do it alone. So what we are trying to deliver here is this collective thinking. And so it opens up our opportunity to start thinking about how do we work out an inter-organizational collaboration. How do we work out a tripartite between government, this morning represented by His Excellency Masood, who was here, and in the other jurisdictions where we work, private sector where some of us are involved, as well as civil society. What is the nexus between those three institutions? And how do we use the three institutions to be able to have collective action? So I think with that, I'll just start off from the extreme right. And the fundamental question is, how do we get it done?
Thank you, John, for your kind words. So I feel that collaboration lies at the heart of the Aga Khan Development Network, of which the Aga Khan Education Service is an agency, and we exist in 38 different countries and 9 regions. So for us at the Aga Khan Education Service, I think we embed collaboration from the word go. We host nursery, primary, and secondary education, and national as well as international curricula. All our curriculum approaches come across from collaborative learning. So when you tell our teachers, we actually tell our teachers, don't go into the classroom preparing to teach. Go into the classroom preparing to make learning happen, and how that learning happens is by engaging our learners with each other. So using the human capital, the human intellect of the other, and facilitating that learning through collaboration is actually pivotal for our institution. What I also want to highlight is our values of equity, ethics, access really reflect the engage, enrich, empower, because what we want to do at the education services and the AKDN at large is to enable a better quality of life for every individual, hence responding to contemporary issues within the community. So you look for issues within the community and you find responses collectively and propose interventions or actions, and actualized by individual collaborative projects within the classroom, collective teacher education systems, responding to the challenge of climate change collectively with neighboring civil society institutions that we work from, getting expertise from perhaps entrepreneur institutions, and working towards individual responses for a collective action. And I hope that has just gotten us started in collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll probably start with the genesis. It was really already around very big collaborative activities in the 1940s, where we were even allowed to exist as a UN agency if we funded for ourselves. So So that meant that individuals around the world, and I guess you all would have known UNICEF cards, were actually buying those cards to support an organization like UNICEF to really stand on its feet. So very clearly, even as a large UN agency, our core mandate to really conserve rights of children across the world, work with governments, began with the genesis of really working with children affected by Second World War and then many other calamities to raise funds from people like you and me to really sustain it. It's only in 2012 or 2010, 2011 or 2012 that in the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child, the role of businesses to respect rights of children came up. Otherwise, it was always about governments upholding duty only, but role of businesses wasn't really as much looked at. Because the reality for us is when we're talking about collaborations, none of us exist in isolation. We've heard today about philanthropy and capital and businesses, everything coexisting and the lines not being as clearly defined as we all believe. So clearly for us, collaborations have meant that we work with governments, we work with private sector, we work with civil society, we work with communities, we work with media, we work with every stakeholder that could impact. And today, increasingly, we also work with young people who are really at the cusp of bringing about big changes. So the entire climate action, we see young people talking about it everywhere. So collaborations could come from anywhere, and solutions could come from anywhere as well. So the very fact that we all exist in an ecosystem where so many things touch us, we buy products from companies, we really use, each of us really, I think, impacts the ecosystem and are part of a large ecosystem. So for us as an organization, that's very, very critical. We work with national governments, we work with county governments, we have a colleague, Zanzibar, who works with the government in Zanzibar as well. We also work with other stakeholders. We clearly today are looking at solutions that are either sustained through market-based approaches. When you talk about water distribution, you want to sustain the deep bore wells that have been dug. You talk about also creating market-based distribution solutions because that's the only way it will sustain. Or community takes over some of these solutions, and in some of the solutions, it's government that sustains it. So you really need to look at multiple models because at the end of the day, if we don't shift the needle in all directions, whatever we do individually may not amount to much. So collaborations, for me, clearly is also, it's a complex problem, so the solution just needs to come from all stakeholders working together as well as collective action.
Yeah, thank you very much. Again, maybe before I speak about collaboration, allow me to commend the efforts by the organizer for this excellent engagement. Coming up back to the question on collaboration, again, it resonates well on what we are doing. East African Business Council, we are the voice of the private sector in the EAC. We work with multiple stakeholders. We work with the government. We work with donors. We work with corporates. I've seen a number of foundations. So when you talk about collaboration, one, it comes from engagement and an effective engagement, strategic engagement. There are two aspects on collaboration that I wanted to share with you. One is accountability. Accountability in defining the roles and responsibility for all the stakeholders involved in your objective, in your goal. Then another one is the communication of the impact. I'm happy my sister here who elucidated very well on the power of artificial intelligence and how you communicate to your donor in terms of impact, in terms of results offer. I think those are very important critical aspects when you talk about collaboration. The role and responsibility of each actor needs to be properly defined. I think it's very important. Then you look at the impact and you look at the results that you anticipate. I've been sharing why I picked the interest to come here was that I wanted to share with you a good example. Currently, we are facing existential threats, global challenges. I always call them 3 C's: COVID, conflict, and climate change. I realized that all the other regions in Africa went to a recession, but East Africa was immune. It was immune. It didn't record the negative growth because of that power of partnership. Government, private sector, civil society coming together say, now we have this challenge, how do we work together? And the model they used was the model of collaboration, engagement, understanding the role and responsibility of each stakeholders involved. So that helped our economy to be resilient from external shocks. Even now, our engagement with the government, and this comes to the discussion we are going to dive deeper. Our engagement, and I had one of my colleagues saying, no, government is there to listen. As long as you are role and responsibility, you do it with accountability. You do it with a feedback mechanism. Say, this is what I'm putting on the table. If you exempt me from paying tax, this is the community I'm going to impact on. These are the jobs I'm going to create. These are the livelihood I'm going to impact. So that is very, very critical. As long as we define our roles and responsibility, it is very paramount in terms of the collaboration, in terms of engagement. Clear definition, clear role responsibility, clear results offer, clear impact. If you can demonstrate that, then collaboration is going to be very effective. Thank you very much.
Okay. So you may have seen at the beginning of my presentation, first of all, thank you very much for being part of my presentation, but as I mentioned, when I started the International Social Impact Institute, the reason why I started was because I've been in the sector for 20 years prior to that, since I was a baby, of course. And what frustrated me was that I teach at New York University, and I always found that we'd have the same sort of organizations coming to take our courses, and the organizations that were in, in the inner city or run by, people of color were just not able to come because they couldn't afford it. Or I would come here to Kenya or to wherever it is, and people would say, "Can we take your courses?" And it just wasn't cost effective. And I thought, I want to be able to deliver the services to folks who need it, because the most important thing in the business that we're in, actually in any business, is you need to be able to tell your story effectively in order to attract the like-minded stakeholders. And so what that made me realize is that I wanted to reach as many organizations as possible, so we partner with the companies, the foundations and the like, to be able to cover the cost of whatever it is we're delivering, so that we can deliver it either for free or low cost to the communities that we want to serve. That was very important to me. But beyond that, we also look at all of the collaborators and all the partners we have. We've created an ecosystem whereby everybody's benefiting from being part of it. So it's not because you've given us a check to deliver service, we're done with you. It's that now we try to find a way to connect you to someone else in our ecosystem, and also the people who benefit. So we're very much about collaboration, and in order for you to amplify anybody's impact, you have to work together cross-sectorally and cross geographies and the like. So I think that's important. But prior to that, I was the CEO of the North American arm of a South African organization called Africa Tikkun. It runs community centers in South Africa, in the townships. And one of the things I thought was really, really, really smart that the leadership in South Africa created was they recognized that in South Africa, corporate South Africa is mandated to adhere to what they call the BBBE scorecard, which is the Black Empowerment Codes. And in order for companies to be able to do business with government, in order for them to be able to be seen as good corporate citizens, there's certain things they need to be able to show, like that they're recruiting from the townships, they have leadership that is Black, and that they have investors who are Black. And what we realized is that as an organization that was running community centers with young people, we didn't want to just go to them for charity. We said we want to be your true business partner. So we learned those laws, and then we created a whole offering whereby we went to, say, ABSA Bank. We said, what do you need in order for to be able to bring entry-level people into your banks, what skills do you need them to have, and we're going to create those skills for you, or we're going to train our kids on the skills for you, then you can hire them. And by the way, they've been with us since they've been little, so we can vouch for them. And so we did that on a different basis, but that was possible because we worked with government, we worked with corporate South Africa, and we also, as an NGO, we worked alone and with other organizations. But that, what we were trying to solve was, economic access for young people, right? That was basically it. And all those different actors were interested in that. So I think one of the things I learned from seeing that being implemented in the organization is that if we understand as nonprofits that we can create value, we don't think of ourselves as always wanting something, but we have something to give and we can figure it out, then I definitely think that we can work with the right actors to be able to solve the problems we're trying to solve.
Hearing clearly is the fact that collaboration means that you're greater than the sum total of your individual efforts. I think it means that there's a diversity of collective intelligence, and therefore everybody has something to bring to the table. And so I think, and those are the questions we're asking ourselves. One of the things that is very clear is it has to be ecosystem thinking, that you cannot remain siloed as a philanthropy or private sector or government, that there are things that each one of them mentioned. One, we have to have a shared understanding. We have to have a common purpose. Why are we doing what we're doing? We have to pool our resources, our knowledge, technical, financial, etc. But there's also a redistribution of power. And you're saying, I think all of us are saying that even if it's the children, their child rights that have to be considered, the youth have to be brought on board, the communities have to come on board. And finally, we also have to have a growth mindset. So it means that there are models that seem to be working. And so I think this is the conversation that we are having out here. But what are the practical things in your mind that we can bring to the table for the community, for us who are gathered here today? And I could start from any direction.
Thank you. So I'll get into the examples of our teaching and learning because we are talking about very practical things. And from the beginning of our primary education, for instance, our grade 6 children create personal projects that they really put a lot of effort in. When they do these projects, they actually go out in the community to research the needs of the community and the urgent responses that they're looking for. Collectively with the community, the learners sit down, facilitated by their teachers, of course, to think through less expensive, affordable, more contextually relevant responses to the issues that have been collectively brought together, which gives this group of students a purpose for their project, which is not just to get a project done, which they must, but it is a project that will resolve the issue of the community that they are surrounded by and the community that they live in. So that brings common purpose. The other practical thing is we encourage everybody to learn from the wisdom of the wise. Yes, we need the younger generation to bring the new thought process, to think outside the box, but we can never discount the wisdom of the elderly and the wise because they set the stage of culture and context for us. So taking these things into consideration, what comes out of the project has the flavor of ownership for everybody because all stakeholders are concerned. So I would like to just give 3 practical tips and then give it to my colleague here. Is 1, to establish a common purpose with all stakeholders that are involved in it. Ensure that there is learning from across all stakeholders, across socioeconomic level, across the gender, across the age bracket, because that's really worked very well for us. And also, as we propose responses or intervention, never to decide the response or the solution for anybody. Propose interventions and responses that work for individual communities and they will pick what works best for them, which will actually bring ownership of the whole project.
Johnny, since you were talking about examples, and I'll give you two very briefly. One, not on what I had worked on, but something that I've always loved from India, and one on the work that we do with a private partner here in Africa as well. The example from India was of an NGO which actually tied up with a private sector company, which was into jewelry and watch manufacturing, and outsourced assembly into a self-help group in a community. And this self-help group set guidelines like, you need to have a minimum education if this to join, to come and work here and be part of the self-help group. They started really looking at creating really barriers or enablers to enter into this, which were around development indicators or indicators in that community. 10 years down the line, an evaluation we did, everything in that community had changed. They were one of the best suppliers to one of the largest conglomerates of a company in the country. And that NGO that started that work did not need to exist in that community anymore. So that's clearly just something that was sustained and is still one of the best models that I've ever really seen work. The second I would sort of say is when you're looking at, and it really began with COVID for us. 2 years, all schools were shut everywhere. We're talking about digital learning everywhere, but at the same time, access to data or cost of data is such a huge barrier. Access to devices is such a huge barrier. The most marginalized still do not have access, and that means we are actually leaving them further behind in education in a continent where already, or in the world, where already children don't learn well. So we started working with a lot of telecom operators to just zero-rate learning platforms so that people can access data, learning content free of cost. Today, globally, there's a huge movement to try and see if all learning platforms in the world can be zero-rated. We don't know whether we'll ever get there or not, but the reality is if you want to reach the most marginalized, that's something we need industry to do. So in that process came in one across 13 countries in Africa, really committed about $50 million worth of free data plus cash to help us deploy it to actually just create this model over 5 years very well. So you're zero-rating platforms, you're connecting schools. We map schools with ITU, Ericsson, and everybody who has technologies who can help us map them. So there is industry, governments, and everybody working together to really say, next time a pandemic happens and schools have to shut, learning should not stop. So it's really about everybody bringing their core expertise to solve for it. And I think that's a model that we just need to start deploying and not really shy away from saying where we lack expertise and bring that in as well.
Yeah, I'm going to share with you again 2 examples from our role is to improve business environment in East Africa. And what we do, we engage regularly with the government. Our government used to, let me give an example recently, that they used to make a budget without consultation with the private sector. They introduced the new tax measures, VAT and other taxes, withholding tax without consulting the private sector, and they passed the budget. After passing the budget, private sector keeps quiet, and they find the way to dodge or avoid the taxes. So recently, they have introduced a system where the private sector has to provide inputs, what we call synopsis inputs to the budget. And last week I was in Uganda, where the budget, when the budget was passed, the private sector said 80% of our submissions to the budget has been integrated. So government realized that through engaging the private sector in the budgeting process or in the policy making process, it has a reward. It is a win-win situation. By doing that, it enhanced or increased the level of compliance in terms of paying tax because the private sector understands the type of tax they are paying. The second element that we've been working at the EAPC, also from the board, when EAPC was, we are celebrating our 25th year now. When it was established by big boys, corporates, big companies, Safaricom, these big corporates. But recently we realized that if we want to grow inclusive private sector, we need to introduce three principles. One, equity, inclusion, and diversity. So to do that, we realize that we need to bring SMEs, micro, small, and medium enterprises, because they constitute 80% of our business. And with that, the board, EAPC board, established a deliberate platform for youth and women, realizing that the voice, interest, and aspiration of youth in our work is very paramount. And even our protocols, recently the way we are engaging in our continental free trade area, they had to fast track the protocol on youth and women to ensure that for the continental free trade area to work, women and youth in business must be involved, must be integral part of the business we want, of the prosperity, shared prosperity we want. So those are the kind of the collaboration and engagement. Whatever you want to do, make sure that the local communities in your design, if you are designing a project, make sure that the local communities are involved. And make sure that the diversity, inclusion, and equity principles are taken into consideration. Because when you do that, then it makes it easier to celebrate the success, to appreciate the impact. It makes it easier to do accountability. It makes it easier to tell a story, a convincing story, because the community will speak. They will speak and they really help you to celebrate the success. And I think that is the way to go in terms of cooperation.
You want to add? Okay. I think what I'm hearing from my panelists are three things. That one, there has to be inclusivity. That you're not going to start anything in this tripartite partnership or tripartite engagement without ensuring everybody is included. And there has to be diversity and equity. Those are the principles that are cross-cutting. But we are also hearing that you have to embrace the context. That you're not going to shove down and, Lord, you respect, many lessons from out there and bring them down here. The local community here has its own solutions and can craft them to address their societal challenges, which is the reality. I mean, I like the women and youth inclusion in MSME, that we have our own solutions that we can tailor-make to address the challenges that we are facing. But also the fact that you have to reconfigure power. I mean, it can't be the government, with all due respect, talking down everybody else's throats, that it has to be a consolidated thought process that is all-inclusive and ensures everybody's voice is heard. So those are some of the issues that we are addressing here. And we are saying that, yes, it doesn't need to be many people. And the examples, those are the examples we are hearing from here. It doesn't need to be many people. And to quote Malcolm Gladwell, that it's the small things that will make a difference. It's a small number of people who will transform this conversation that we are hearing. And I think I'll give you a final round of your thoughts as we close the plenary. I think I'm being warned that we have 10. Yes, but we also open it up. We can also open it up to a question, a comment, a contribution. Yeah. I can see a hand up here. I can see two hands. One right here. Do you have a mic? I think the guys who are doing the mic can probably, there's a hand right behind there. Just let us know your name and probably your organization, and then your question. You'd have started right here at the front. Henry.
Good afternoon, and thank you, moderator and the panelists. I am struggling with two words: systems and solidarity. Because in the morning, during the opening ceremony or session, we discussed about systems change. And the question I had was, how do we talk about systems change when it is driven by those who have the resources? When it is driven by the donors, and we had it that because we have small organizations, they will say yes, because the donor wants this. I worked in an organization, and we visited a local organization which we thought they would receive our funding, and they said no to our funding. And I was happy because I saw a local organization that was empowered to say no because the resource provider wants to influence their strategy. At what level will local organizations get to that level where they can say no? When we can talk about solidarity on an issue. When there is competition, not for the impact or outcomes, but competition for the numbers. That is congested. Ask where the competition is or how the competition is when it comes to the real measurement of the outcomes of the different interventions in philanthropy. There are few. Number two, at what point will we drop our logos and now talk about the issues so that we can stand together? We can have that solidarity. I love the private sector, and I think John Bosco has talked about it. Where I come from, annually, the private sector has breakfast with His Excellency the President because they influence, to some extent, how the government does things and taxes and all that. When you look at the different philanthropic organizations, the NGOs, the private sector, the private foundations, the amount of money that we invest in the communities is a lot. At what point do we come together and realize the potential and the power of influence that we have, that we can stand together and have the presidents of the different countries and the senior government officials sit with us so that we can share our views and influence the way investments are done in the different countries. Thank you.
Much, Henry, for those questions. Yeah, there's a hand right behind there. We'll take those two, and I'll just open it up to my panelists to share their thoughts, their yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me stand here because I'm short for the benefit of inclusivity to be seen. My name is Rachel Mwekali from Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders in Kenya, aka Pussy Power. Yes, Pussy Power. That's our organization. It's a social movement. Why am I saying this name? And as I can see people are laughing, touching each other. When you talked about compliance, some of our organic way of organizing for young feminists, young activists are very radical words like Pussy Power. How would government give us that platform for compliance? Because we have tried, most of our organizations having that compliance, but we are thrown out of that civic space of compliance. So my question to the panelists, in terms of everybody talking about intersectionality, in the spirit of leave no one behind, which is SDG, and do no harm. We are currently in East Africa community, we are seeing that most of our governments, including my own government, that are very anti-choice and anti-gender, where we have seen even some of the philanthropic organizations have been supportive of also the cause, even around LGBTQ, which many people don't talk about it, but also there's a level of violence. How do you bring back that live, organic, authentic solidarity in this space? I'd really love to hear that. I'd really love to see how do you bring the authentic power of private sector from my brother, because the private sector have a lot of power, even deciding who is the president of the country. Even deciding who is the MP of the area. Private sector has that power. Why are we not filling in some of these issues? And acknowledging, I know there's a lot of politics, what is moral, what is immoral, what is the law, but at the end of the day, we are also following that rule of the law. But sometimes we feel gagged down, even young people. So I'd really love to hear from your point, even UNICEF on comprehensive sex education. What does it mean for authentic solidarity without a philanthropic saying, this one she's problematic, I can't fund her because the government will come after me. Then how is the resources available? Because I hear everybody saying there's resource, but I'm not feeling the resource. I'm struggling to get even that resource. Thank you. You're not clapping for me?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you. We've had two questions, and maybe we'll just respond to those and then give you an opportunity. But I think listening to reiterate the question from Henry is, yes, how do we stand together? Remember, a chain is as strong as its weakest link. And I think, let me throw it to the panelists to respond to that.
Thank you. Let me start with the question from Henry, and I think this is where we need to start. Generally, our systems were tested during COVID. We realized that our systems were very weak, and the impact was so severe because of lack of collaboration, even lack of using our own resources. So it starts with us, individual, community. We need to break the silo effect within ourselves. And that brings me a question on a culture change, a paradigm shift, not only with the civil society, but among even our governments. We've been all the time looking at the West, going with a begging bowl, when we have resources. And I always call it, it's a paradox. You have water surrounding you, like here we are, with Indian Ocean with us, and you are dying of thirst. So I think this is the narrative we want as an Africa. Before even we look at our development pattern, can't we leverage our own resources? Brothers and sisters, can't we work and exploit our own comparative advantage? But you find every time you develop a project, you are looking at the West to be funded. And I was looking at even this idea of philanthropic, how it emanated. It has been outward oriented, meaning it has been very vertical in nature, meaning that the rich have to give to the poor. Can't we create our ecosystem, a kind of a horizontal approach, where myself, John Bosco, I can support my sister and make an impact to her? And we used to have that culture. We used to coexist amongst our communities, support each other. Your brother is sick, contribute his medical bill. We used to have that culture. So I think this is the paradigm shift we need. This is the culture shift we need. This is the kind of attitude we need. We should not always say we don't have resources. The resources are there. What we are lacking is the will and willingness to exploit our own resources internally without looking at the West.
And keep it as short as, yes, and also keep it as short as possible.
I know that I'm the person coming from the West, but I'm Ugandan, so I want to be clear about that. The diaspora is really, really important in this equation. We're also the fifth region, right, of the African Union. And someone asked me the question last night, how do you engage the diaspora? I don't know how many of you are currently engaging the diaspora, but folks like me, we're not necessarily tribalists. We're not focused on a particular country. We're just about Africa, right? The folks who were younger than me, not even older, but younger than me, if you can tell them a compelling story about the work that you're doing, and you bring them into the decision making, and you create vehicles for them to get involved, they can support the work that you're doing. So I'm just bringing that part of it, because I think even though we're saying we shouldn't always go to the West for solutions, the most natural people who have the most vested interest on Africa's development are actually the diaspora. So we need to look at the diaspora and how we can connect. I mean, I had no reason to come and work here when I did work for South African organization, but simply because from when I was a little girl, I was taught how important it was for me to stay connected to the continent. I know there are a lot of people whose parents have taught them the same. So I think that I just want you to think about the diaspora as being an important part of whatever it is that you're doing.
I think when we're really talking about really enabling actions or solidarity, I would sort of say it's a process, it's a journey as well. So there will not be an ideal that will pose for ourselves very soon, maybe. But I do remember about 25 years ago, when I'd just begun in the development sector, there was a Dutch person in our office who sort of saw something that was happening in India and said there was no way that my government would have gotten away with it. So we also, as community or citizens, don't necessarily always take the same right stance, right? I mean, we don't take stands as community as well. So no matter what, that solidarity will come from action from all ends as well. So if we are very resilient, very compromising on things that we know are obviously going wrong, it will continue to. So, and not to be an activist in the room, but that's a reality, and that's a reality that we know a lot of countries cannot get. I mean, it is Netherlands, which basically was forced to sort of say that by from 2024, no private jets from our airports, because there was public action against it. So there are multitude of things that would make it happen. We don't live in an ideal world anywhere in the world, actually. But I guess, especially our sector, probably has a larger role to play to make that happen somewhere. And it will be a journey, a step at a time, is all I would say.
Thank you. I'll build on what Latika has just said, and I think that if we look at a broader horizon of resources, we will appreciate the fact that financial resources are just but a part of resources that are required for any action. So looking at expertise, looking at manpower, looking at intellectual resources, and starting from the grassroots levels of where we are, whether you're at a strategic level in your institution or at a grassroots level in implementation, that is where you start the collaboration to bring solidarity. And like things have, from the grassroots level, have caught public attention and government interest, it will happen. But we do need to start. We can't take a step back and say, I want a particular type of resource for me to begin the change that I want to see. And I feel that we are actually challenged to make the change and start today.
Yeah, I think, thank you very much. We are hearing the same thing, that in the words of Barack, that the world will not change at any time if I'm not the change that I need to see. The same words of Mother Teresa, that cast the first stone and sent out the ripple that will create a bigger movement and snowball into something different. I saw a hand right there. I'll give you a chance to ask your question. I think 2 now, and then I think we'll be good to go. So we have another few minutes to go.
So my name is Rose Marandu from the Women Fund Tanzania. When we talk very much for this, and for what? And I think those are the pertinent questions that we should ask. Is interrogating our own powers as philanthropic organizations. With why are we ourselves? And are we ourselves? Because UNICEF has a lot of power when he's sitting with a community organization down there, their funding, their solidarity and collaboration won't be at the same level. So do most of us here in the work we do. If I am grant maker, I have a lot of power as compared to the grantee I'm giving. How much are we ready to have a truth, transparency, and sharing that power to others so that we sit on the table on the same level and realize the true solidarity? Otherwise, it may be a rhetoric word that we see solidarity, solidarity, solidarity. But when it comes to financial resources and power, is the person who has funds. And that solidarity. Otherwise, it may end up, oh, we had a meeting, they suggested this, they did that, and most women and children, who are the most grantees, are the ones, the word solidarity has been used redundantly and doesn't make any meaning to them. So interrogating that power and engaging the political discussion around power and solidarity and collaboration is very pertinent if we want to transform the system through which we are talking about from the very early morning today. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Patricia Kitao Ekulo from the African Population and Health Research Center, EAPC. Very engaging discussions, and I think we are at a time when we should be having these discussions. Just back to the earlier point that was raised on community involvement. We're talking about, we're trying to enhance community involvement. And when we think about systems change, I think we need to define what that community involvement means. And the people who have spoken before me have mentioned that we need to be thinking about empowering communities. But I think rather than throwing words around, we should actually be thinking about how to actualize what we're saying. And I would like to hear from the panel what some of the ways are we can involve the community so that we see a change, an actual change in the system, so that we're not just throwing words around. Thank you.
Pertinent. It's a complex issue, yes. And these are difficult conversations we must have. And let me begin with you, Liz. What are your thoughts based on the questions that have been asked?
So I think first all this starts with listening, right? It's listening, I'm addressing this latest question. And I think one of the things that the organization I used to work for, that I mentioned, Africa Tikkun, in addition to having community centers, it also had a focus on children with disabilities and their families. And part of it was helping the families to understand the grants that were available to support the kids to be able to go through school and the like. But one of the things we realized by bringing the mothers together was the mothers said, that's great, you're supporting us around that, but what's also important to us is that we need to be able to connect with one another, and we need to be able to be supported ourselves, support one another. And so we created a program in conjunction with, in partnership with them, that enabled them to really celebrate, because in South Africa and actually quite frankly around the world, people who have children with disabilities are often shunned, right? And so it was a time when they can now rethink how they looked at their children as actually something they're proud of. And so one of the things that I remembered seeing in one of the townships where we worked was the women said, we want to paint our shacks. We want to paint our shacks purple because we want people to know that we have a child with cystic fibrosis living in this house. And then they painted whoever, so-and-so, Tabo lives here. And so by tapping into what was important to them, we not only fortified them, but helped them to fortify themselves, but then created a better environment for kids that the kids were living in. So I think that's an example of something that we did around that I'm really proud of, that was really great.
Yeah, I think this is where we need a general mindset change, because in any undertaking or negotiation, we start from an inferior point of view. And and I always share an example, maybe I can share an example. Aga Khan owns Serena hotels across the region. So under that, the private sector came up with a program called Supply Development Program. Meaning, before you import meat or vegetables or other products, you must ensure that those products are not available within your proximity, meaning that you need to buy from the locals. So the locals could supply fruits, vegetables. They could only import those that are not available. So we influenced even our government in terms of procurement. Currently in Kenya, 40% of the local procurement has to be done by women, unless you demonstrate that the women within your country doesn't have that capacity to supply. So that is how you influence the policy, that's how you influence the decision. The same with the donors. And I have my brother John, we worked together with Trademark. We used to have a program, a principle called do no harm. Make sure that your intervention should not impact negatively the community you came to help. So the community had a voice. They knew their role and responsibility. If the project is harming them negatively, then they had channels to raise or to give the feedback that this project is not benefiting us. So that is the voice, that is the accountability, that is the engagement we are talking about. So it is important that everyone knows the rights and obligations. But when you start saying that you will not be on the same level with UNICEF, but you can influence the decision, what UNICEF is doing in your community, in your country, And there are now multiple channels where you can raise your voice and say, this project is not helping us. And our government are now listening. That is the power of partnership. We always say, through partnership, you achieve a win-win situation. And from the private sector, we have done it, we have made it, and we are on the driving seat. We used to be passive, but currently, as you mentioned, we always have breakfast meeting with the president, say, this is what we want. If you want us to contribute to job creation, please lower the taxes. Please improve the business environment. That is the kind of engagement. So even from the civil society, you need to be organized, raise your voice, work together in a coordinated, consistent manner. The problem that you work in, you don't work together. So it starts with us. And I think that is the solution, that is the discussion, because the current system is that when you, as someone said, when I have a project, when it is funded, I will not tell my counterpart or my colleague, my neighbor that I got funding. But when both of you are out of funding, that's when you start conversing with each other, when you don't have funds. But when you get funds, you not talk to your friends.
I think, I'll just respond to what you were saying in terms of community engagement, clearly, and I'll just give you to you as an example of a tool, a digital public good, because that's one of our core focus areas as well on creating a lot of public goods. And we have a tool called YouReport, which on WhatsApp, SMS, Messenger, young people can engage with that tool, and we send out polls, we send out surveys, we send out educational material, multiple other things with multiple organizations on gender, various issues, climate. And over 5 years, last 5 years of using YouReport, we have about 30 million subscribers across the world, and all young people on it. We've used it for COVID action from young people in terms of just breaking myths. We've used it on gender. Today, right now, there's a poll running on climate. We've also used it on really prioritizing what is it that young people wanted from their governments to really look at what the program should be within the education system. For instance, in India, career guidance came out as one of the largest needs. So that is really where we influence government's priorities on really focusing on career guidance in schools. But that was informed by young people. So there are multiple tools, multiple ways you can. Yes, there will be focus groups. There could be many of these. And there are solutions at scale available as well. And today, especially when we have so much of our community connected through mobiles, a lot of it through basic handsets maybe, we just need to be able to use them to actually listen to them as well. So there is plenty, and I guess the whole thing is how willing are we, one, to listen, and how willing are we to change what we're doing too.
So responding to ways in which we actually do community engagement, I'd go back to my previous example in terms of listening, of course, and building a common purpose. And I'll give you a very specific example of a group of students for their community action and service went out to support a general community, improve their environment. Restaurants around wanted this group to work on creating a better compost space because the garbage they threw around was smelling and littering. The proposal was made and taken to the community around those restaurants, and the community said, you know what? We don't really care about the smell. We've kind of gotten used to it. What bothers us, the number of accidents that take place and we lose our children. So that listening turned around the project for our learners and our groups to listen to the community and propose to them multiple ways of resolving, ways in which making that space safe, whether it's the road space, and proposing, like I said, we propose interventions and suggest to the community what works best for them, as opposed to telling them that we're going to create a zebra crossing. Yes, there was a proposal for zebra crossing and more, and the community turned around and said, nobody obeys the law here, so nobody's going to wait. The cars are not going to wait for the zebra crossing. Our children are going to die. They ended up facilitating a speed bump because that's what worked for the community, and they felt that their need was being met. They didn't want a better garbage place. They didn't want any recycling or compost creation. They wanted to prevent children's accidents on the road. So that's the level we go to when we say community engagement, listening, responding, creating a common purpose, and proposing intervention as opposed to suggesting a solution. Thank you.
I think, thank you very much. What we are saying is that it has to be a fundamental mindset shift. That's the reality. It has to be collective action. And forums like this, East Africa Philanthropy Network, Africa Philanthropy Network, give us a foundation and a platform to keep on having these very, very difficult conversations. And it's complex, we totally agree that, but we are also saying it's those small steps, the baby steps that we take that are going to create this fundamental change. So having said that, we are saying that emerging technologies, like what we've just been shown, the presentation just before this discussion, the chat GBTs, give the citizenry a voice. And we know citizen activism is on the rise across the globe. And those are the channels, those are the tools that are at our disposal for us to make that incremental change towards reimagining the future that we all envision. So thank you very much, my panelists. It's been a great honor and privilege to host these great minds ahead of me, and obviously to the panelists for the very illuminating questions. But it's a conversation. Yeah, it's a conversation that has to be told and retold, and introspection, it's ongoing. So thank you very much.
Thank you. A warm round of applause for this panel. They took us through one of the hardest sessions to have a panel in. So thank you very much to John and all the panelists.